very painful to see. And then he spoke about Catholics, and he said, we are a chosen people, a people set apart, a predestined people, as St. Paul also tells us. And he said, we are Eucharistic instruments of reparation, in charge of the salvation of all of humanity. And then he spoke about priesthood, and he said, there is no human being on earth that carries a greater power against evil than a holy priest. He said, a holy priest will make hell tremble. And then he spoke about the sacrament of confession. And he said, because we have been created to be Catholics, to be instruments of the Eucharist, we need to be fed through the sacraments. And the moment I walked away from the sacraments, I became undernourished. And then the spirit of the world seduced me, and I didn't have the strength to defend myself, and I was seduced for 33 years. That was so painful. I could never explain to you what I felt, to see what I have walked into all my life. And then he compared the sacrament of confession with an exorcism, because he told me, a mortal sin is a demon, is a spirit, is a person. And when we stay in mortal sin, the longer we are in mortal sin, the more demons that unite to that sin, and we end up with a legion. And only the Catholic Church, through the sacrament of confession, by the hands of the priest, can untie us, free us from the devil. And after this, he spoke to me about the Eucharist, and he said, the greatest gift that the Almighty Father has granted to all of humanity is the Eucharist. He said, it is the greatest gift ever. That's why we are instruments of the greatest gift. That the biggest mission of a Catholic is the Eucharist. And the greatest gifts that we take with us the day we pass away into the next life is how many souls God could have rescued through our faithfulness to the Eucharist. And because every time we take communion, God is rescuing souls. Now he spoke to me about the priest coming into the sacristy and dressing up with the liturgical vestments. He spoke to me about the spiritual battle that begins before the Mass, when the priest is all dressed up and comes out to the altar and kisses the altar. A big light descends from heaven on the spiritual territory that covers the altar where the Mass is being celebrated. And all demonic activities in that spiritual territory cease, because demons can stand the light and they run away. So during the Mass, there is a lot of freeing and delivering and healings. And then he says that when we are assisting Mass and we are in grace with God and we come to communion, Jesus Eucharist uses our communion to rescue souls from eternal damnation. At the moment we take communion, there are many people dying around the world, and many are in danger of condemnation. Jesus Eucharist rescues souls every time we take communion. That's why he called us Eucharistic instruments of reparation. When we walk away from the Mass, wherever we go, we are like columns of light, and demons flee. So he reminded me of a passage of St. Paul where he says, do not dare to come before the altar of the Lord to eat of this bread if you are not prepared, because you will lead your own condemnation. And he told me why it was so serious and important to understand how we have to be meticulous in our preparation to take communion. Now, he spoke to me about the 10 Commandments